It started with a flicker, not the kind that draws immediate concern, but the kind that barely registers until it's too late. 1 minute the overhead fluorescents buzzed with their usual hum, and the next they stuttered like a dying breath. I was the last one left in the office that Friday night. Or at least, I thought I was. The building had that eerie silence that only comes after hours, when the 9-to-5ers have already filtered out and the cleaning crew hasn't yet made their rounds. I was perched at my desk on the 14th floor of the Cordova Financial Tower, downtown, gray glass and steel, typing out the final report my manager had insisted be ready by Monday. Typical. The floor below had been under renovation for months. It was always dark, cluttered with scaffolding and old equipment. Security told us to steer clear and I did. Mostly. At exactly 11:47 p.m., my screen blinked once, then twice, then shut off completely. All the lights died in perfect sync, plunging the entire office into a blue-lit gloom from the cityscape outside. My first thought was a power cut. But that didn't make sense. A tower like this had at least 2 backup generators. Then, over the loudspeaker, the kind mounted in every corner, usually used for fire drills, came a mechanical tone. And then a voice. Oh, monotone. Unnatural. Emergency alert. Lockdown initiated. Do not exit the building. This is not a drill. The words repeated once. Then silence. I sat frozen in my chair, heart thudding. A joke? A glitch? Maybe some bored tech in security messing around? But then came the clanking. Metal locks sliding into place with that industrial finality. I turned toward the glass wall near the emergency stairwell and watched the fire door swing shut on its own. It hissed, sealed, and a red light above blinked on, locked. I stood, grabbed my phone, and instinctively tried calling someone. My screen showed no service. The signal was usually decent up here. My reflection stared back at me in the dark glass, flickering every time the emergency lights blinked on and off. That was when I noticed something else. Across the floor, maybe 6 cubicles down, a screen was still on. That shouldn't be. Everyone had left by 7. I'd heard them say goodnight. I know they left. I moved cautiously, stepping around desks and chairs like navigating a graveyard. The glow came from Jordan's cubicle, our software lead. His monitor was on, showing static. No signal. No icons. Just a low hiss and a faint flicker, like a dying broadcast. Then it changed. The screen cleared and showed me, from above, an overhead angle. Right now, standing in Jordan's cubicle, staring at the screen. I jerked backward, almost falling into his chair. I'm not proud to admit I ran. Back to my own desk, slammed the drawer, grabbed my bag, and as if in perfect timing, the overhead speaker returned. Do not exit the building. External environment not safe. Do not attempt escape. Not safe? I hurried to the floor's main exit. A heavy double door that led to the elevators. Pushed, locked. Through the narrow pane of reinforced glass, I saw the elevator panel blinking. All floors unresponsive. And then, someone approached the doors from the other side. I knocked. They didn't respond. Just walked slowly, stiffly. It was Sarah, the night receptionist. She must have been on her way out. Sarah. I called. Let me out. The floor's locked down. But she didn't even look up. She stopped 3 feet from the glass. Then began twitching. Slow at first, then violent, uncontrollable. Like a puppet with its strings cut and rewired. Her eyes rolled upward. Blood began leaking from her nose. She opened her mouth and screamed silently. The glass cracked. One long fracture from top to bottom. Not shattered, just broken. Then she collapsed. Out of view. I took 3 steps back. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Upstairs. Even though this was the top floor of the occupied tower. There was no 15th floor, not technically. That space was unused, just air conditioning units and maintenance ducts. The footsteps were slow, methodical, and definitely boots. I froze, trying not to breathe. My heart slammed so hard I thought I'd go deaf from it. The footsteps stopped. And then came another noise, the sound of someone dragging metal. Like a pipe. Or maybe a weapon. I backed away from the stairwell and ducked behind my desk, barely daring to move. The speaker crackled again. Do not engage. Remain still. Eyes closed. What the hell was this? A drill? A game? A psychological experiment? Or was I going insane? I couldn't follow that order. I crawled under my desk and peeked toward the staircase. The glass door now had handprints on it. Greasy, red-stained. One of the emergency lights popped, shattering glass across the carpet. Sparks danced. That's when the screen at my desk previously dead, flickered to life. Another live feed. This time showing a room I had never seen before. A wide, sterile space. Medical beds. Monitors. Restraints. And something tall, inhuman, moving between the beds. It looked up, directly at the camera, as if it could see me. The screen went black. I grabbed my chair to steady myself. My palms were slick with sweat. My breath caught in my throat. And then the phone at the nearest cubicle rang. One ring. Loud. Jarring. I moved toward it cautiously. Picked it up. Hello. Static. Then a whisper. Don't let it see you move. It tracks movement. If you stay perfectly still, it may pass. Click. The line went dead. I set the receiver down like it might explode. From across the floor, I heard the door to the stairwell creak open. Someone had entered. No, something. The room chilled like all heat had been vacuumed out. My breath fogged in the air. And the scent? Copper, mold, electricity. A long, slow inhale. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was watching. I crouched behind the nearest filing cabinet. Closed my eyes. Everything was silent. No speaker. No lights. No movement. And then, something brushed against the back of my neck. Not a touch, a breath. A wet, hungry breath. I didn't move. Didn't even blink. Then the emergency speaker whispered, barely audible. You're not the only one left. A new light flickered on in the far corner, the glass meeting room. Inside, huddled beneath the table, were two other employees I hadn't realized were still here. One was sobbing silently. The other mouthing something repeatedly. This has happened before. This has happened before. And in the darkness outside the glass, a reflection that didn't belong to anyone in the room. The building wasn't just locked down. It was sealed for containment. Not to keep us safe from what's outside, but to keep something else from getting out. And whatever that something was, it was already in the building. The next hour blurred into fragments, scattered pieces of time stitched together with panic and adrenaline. I remember pressing myself against the cold wall of the hallway outside the meeting room, barely breathing. The two employees I'd seen hiding under the glass table were huddled silently now. Melissa, one of the project managers, and Aaron, an intern. Both pale. Both broken. Melissa's mascara had streaked down her cheeks. Aaron couldn't stop shaking. Every 5 minutes, he'd mutter the same line under his breath like a chant. They said this floor wasn't part of the plan. They said we weren't supposed to be here. The emergency lights above us flickered again. For a moment, the hallway dimmed into almost total darkness, and in that brief blackout, we heard it, the sound of something brushing the walls. What? Slow. Curious. Then a dragging sound. Something metal. When the lights sputtered back to life, Aaron was no longer beside us. The glass door leading to the stairwell was half open, just half. We never heard him scream. Melissa wouldn't leave the corner. She kept repeating, I saw it. I saw its shadow. It had no head. That was when I knew, staying put was suicide. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. It was designed, controlled, released. I left her for a moment and returned to Jordan's desk, where I had seen the overhead camera feed earlier. The screen was now black, just static again. But as I leaned forward to inspect it, something changed. The screen cleared, and a file opened by itself. Maintenance _hall _log _72 _encrypted. It scrolled automatically. Lines of distorted text, corrupted timestamps, and then an embedded photo. A tall figure in an outdated Cordova Tower security uniform, half his face obscured by shadow, was captured in a blurry still image. What stood out, what chilled my spine, was the badge on his chest. Red. Employee, Donovan Grace. Status, terminated, 1997. Reason, deceased. The man in the photo had been dead for nearly 30 years. The screen blinked again. Maintenance Tunnel B, floor 14, access door behind vending machine. I turned slowly to the break room. That vending machine had always looked oddly placed. Backed against a wall with no electrical socket, no reason for it to be there. Just blocking something. I ran to it, and behind it, I was right, was a steel access panel. No handle. Just a biometric scanner that blinked green when I touched it. The machine must have scanned my ID badge without me realizing it. This. Click. Slide. The wall opened sideways like a vault, revealing a dim concrete passage lined with rusted pipes and old light bulbs that swung faintly on chains. This was no maintenance tunnel. This was a bunker. I stepped inside and the door sealed behind me. It was cold, not just temperature cold, but sterile. The kind of cold that made your thoughts slower, heavier. My footsteps echoed endlessly. The tunnel felt longer than the building should have allowed. Then I saw it. The room. Dim, lit by a single flickering bulb. And inside, the man from the photo. Donovan Grace. Still in uniform. Still tall. Still dead. He was crouched in the corner, rocking back and forth. Face obscured by shadow, but I could see the unmistakable signs of rot. His jaw moved in stiff, jerking motions. "Can't leave?" he whispered. "Not when it's loose. It sees you when you breathe. Don't breathe, don't move. We let it out and now it knows." I took a cautious step forward. He snapped his head up. Eyes milky, hollow sockets with no emotion. "Did you hear it laugh?" he asked. I didn't answer. He pointed behind me. I turned and saw a CCTV monitor wall, 30 screens, each showing parts of the building I had never seen before. Some floors were still lit. Others were completely dark. One screen showed an office filled with frozen bodies, unmoving, eyes open. Another showed floor 13, which didn't exist. No button in the elevator. No sign on the stairwell. But there it was. Cameras showed rows of filing cabinets, typewriters, old office furniture from the 80s, and bloodstains, dozens of them dried and smeared like someone had been dragged. I leaned in, and one of the monitors shifted to live feed. Someone was walking down floor 13. Their back was to the camera. They were tall, wearing the same security uniform as Donovan. "Who is that?" I asked. Donovan didn't reply. He was staring at the wall, whispering a new phrase now. "Don't let it touch the glass. It breaks reflections." I backed away slowly. This man wasn't just insane. He was infected with something, not viral, but psychic. Like the madness had seeped into him and hollowed him out. That's when I heard Melissa scream. Muffled. Above me. She must have followed. I ran back toward the exit, hitting the panel. Nothing. It was locked again. Trap. I slammed my fist against the wall. And that's when the radio on the nearby desk crackled to life. Floor 13 breached. Subject active. Protocol Delta Black. Evac blocked. Total lockdown confirmed. I picked up the radio. "Who is this? Who's running this?" A voice answered, cold, calm, surgical. "You weren't supposed to see this." And then silence. Behind me, Donovan began to laugh, quietly at first, then with guttural, choking gasps. He stood, taller than I expected, and stepped into the only beam of light. His face was wrong. Skin stretched too tight, jaw too wide, teeth missing in unnatural patches. And his shadow. His shadow didn't move like his body. It was slower, jerkier, delayed, like it wasn't his at all. I didn't wait. I ran. Down the tunnel. Deeper. Hoping for another way out. The hallway curved. Slowed. Turned sharply. I passed another steel door, marked only with a black placard. Level, -1, authorized access only, Project Obsidian. Obsidian? I'd seen that word before. On the NDA I signed when I joined Cordova. I pressed my badge against the reader. Green light. The door opened. Inside was a long observation chamber, like something from a psychiatric hospital. A one-way mirror on the far wall. White bars covered in red marker diagrams. Names. Symbols. Equations that looked more esoteric than scientific. I moved closer to the mirror. On my side, silence. On the other side, the room. Empty, except for a mirror facing me from the other side. A mirror in a room with no visible entrance. No reflection of the wall. No camera feed. Only me watching me. But as I leaned in, heart racing, breath fogging the glass, my reflection blinked. Before I did, I stumbled back, and the intercom hissed again. Mirror breached. Subject aware. Containment compromised. I was shaking now. This wasn't just about a lockdown. This was an experiment gone wrong. A trap designed to hold something ancient, intelligent, and deeply malevolent. I turned and fled the chamber, back up the passage. The vending machine had been moved. I burst back into the office floor. Melissa was gone. In her place, a message on the wall, scratched in red. "You're a mirror too." There's something about silence after screams. It feels like the building is watching you wait. After Melissa vanished, I stood alone, heart racing, in the flickering hallway of floor 14. The walls hummed like they were alive, buzzing with electricity that didn't exist. I just returned from the maintenance tunnel, shaken and barely holding it together. On the far wall, Melissa's final message was still scratched into the plaster. "You're a mirror too." I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But I was about to find out. I forced myself to move. My phone was still dead. Zero signal, no time, not even a home screen anymore. Just black. Even its reflection in the office glass panels was slightly off, like it lagged by a fraction of a second. I headed to the only place I hadn't dared check yet, the stairwell. The keypad next to it, once red, was now blinking green. I pressed the door. It hissed open. Cold air spilled out like fog from a freezer. Not just a breeze, freezing, stale, metallic. The stairwell inside was pitch black, except for a low reddish emergency glow far below. I started down. Passing floor 13 was easy, or should have been. The floor had no button in the elevator. No markings on the wall. Yet here, between 12 and 14, was a solid gray door, unmarked except for a faint scratched number. 13, crooked and thin like a child had etched it with a key. I paused. My instinct screamed no. But this entire night had been built on ignoring instincts. I turned the handle. It opened. And just like that, I stepped into floor 13, a place no one acknowledged, a place the building pretended didn't exist. It was like stepping into another time. The walls were peeling, yellowed with age. Old fluorescent lights buzzed above, barely holding on. The floor was carpeted with dust, deep enough to muffle my steps, untouched for years. Rows of cubicles, not like the modern ones above. These were metal-framed, square, filled with typewriters, rotary phones, and paper files stacked sky-high. It was like walking into an office trapped in 1983. And everywhere I looked, what? Not fresh. Dried. Smeared. Drip trails that led into cubicles beneath desks. Some of it old and flaking. Some of it still wet. I stepped forward, careful not to make a sound. The first desk I checked had a nameplate, Howard Yates, Department of Internal Review. Beside it sat a file folder. I opened it. Inside, photos of Cordova employees, all with black bars over their eyes, like redacted evidence. Under each photo, words like unstable, duplicate, and most often, terminated. Then a scribbled note at the bottom. Subjects developing reflective bleed. Mirror containment breach probable. Floor 13 isolated indefinitely. I moved on. The phones on the desks were all off the hook. One still had a faint dial tone, but no buttons. Then I saw it, at the far end of the floor, a glass conference room with all its blinds torn off. Something was moving inside. I ducked. Watched. Looked like Melissa. She stood in the middle of the room, facing the mirror wall. But her posture was wrong. Rigid. Her head was tilted at an impossible angle, like someone had jerked it too far and left it there. She was talking, but I couldn't hear anything. Then her reflection in the glass began to move on its own. It stepped closer. Smiled. She didn't. Her reflection placed its hand on the glass, slowly, reverently. And then, so did she, like a puppet. But her hand didn't touch the mirror. It touched air. Her reflection was now controlling her. I backed away, breath caught in my throat. Then I heard a whisper beside me, but when I turned, there was no one there. Just a cracked mirror leaning against a cubicle wall. It was my reflection. Except I wasn't moving. The reflection was. It raised its hand. I didn't. It mouthed a word. Run. I bolted. Back toward the stairwell. But the door was gone. Not closed. Not hidden. Gone. The wall where it had been was now solid concrete. The lights above flickered and changed color, from white to deep red. A siren began to wail softly, the same mechanical voice returned. Subject identified. Floor 13 breach. Containment compromised. Initiate cycle reset. Cycle reset? I turned. Melissa was gone from the glass room. But the reflection, her copy, was walking toward me. The carpet under its feet didn't make a sound. Its hands twitched unnaturally, bones cracking in reverse. It stared at me not like it wanted to kill me, but like it knew me, intimately, inside out. And then, it smiled with my face. I've been waiting so long to be real, it whispered, in my voice. I ran. No idea where to go, just away from it. Past the cubicles, down another hallway that hadn't been there before. My breath echoed like it wasn't mine. At the end of the hall, an old elevator. The panel had only one button. -1. I slammed it. The doors opened without a sound. Inside, the walls were mirrored, all sides. And every single reflection was wrong. Some were me but grinning. Some covered in blood. One was holding a knife. One was staring upward, face pale and eyes rolled back. I closed my eyes. The doors shut. The elevator began to descend. It went deeper than the basement. Much deeper. The floor count went negative. -1. -2. -3. -4. Then stopped. The doors opened. I was no longer in a building. It felt like a void. A black hallway with soft, impossible shadows. At the far end was a large room, and inside a wall of monitors, all watching me in different places. My apartment, my work desk, even my childhood bedroom. This wasn't surveillance. This was replication. And in the center, a steel coffin-sized pod labeled Project Obsidian, Reflection Anchor Unit Number 001. Subject, redacted. Status, unstable. I stepped closer. Inside the pod was a figure, myself. Eyes closed, hooked to wires, breathing. I wasn't out. I was still in there. This whole thing was a loop, a recursive hallucination. Every time I thought I escaped, I just entered another layer. The emergency voice returned, now broken, corrupted. Emergency alert. The mirror is a gate. Do not exit. Do not exit. Do not exit. And then, static. A screen on the wall came to life. Live feed. It showed Melissa, now completely overtaken by her reflection, dragging another body across floor 13. Then it switched to me staring into the camera. The real me, or the mirror one? I couldn't tell anymore. The screen blinked. Do not exit. Containment failure will result in identity collapse. And beneath it, a timer began to count down. 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 59 seconds, 2 minutes and 58 seconds. I turned and ran, but there were no doors this time. Only mirrors, dozens, hundreds. And in every one I was already there, waiting. The elevator moved down, deeper than -1, deeper than what should have been possible. The floor numbers on the small cracked panel blinked erratically. Then they vanished completely. Just a blank screen, and the soft groan of steel cables stretching somewhere far above me. There was no more counting. Only descent. When the elevator finally stopped, there was no ding. No light. No mechanical voice announcing arrival. Just a long, unnatural pause. Then the doors slid open. Beyond them, darkness. Not the kind your eyes adjust to. This was thick, suffocating black. The kind that felt sentient. Like it wrapped around you and listened. I stepped forward anyway. What choice did I have? As I crossed the threshold, the elevator doors slammed shut behind me. The echo was swallowed immediately. It was as if sound itself didn't want to linger here. Then, dim blue lights blinked on overhead, low strips running along the floor and ceiling. I could finally see where I was. A long hallway, impossibly narrow, like the building's skeleton. The walls weren't concrete or steel. They looked like glass. But behind the panels, there were no circuits, no pipes, no wires. Just faces. Dozens of them. Pressed up against the inside. Watching me. Some looked scared. Some looked familiar. Some were me. All of them bled from the eyes. At the end of the hallway stood a large metal door. Burned into its rusted surface was a single word. Obsidian. Underneath, a warning. Access restricted. No reflection beyond this point. I pushed the door. It opened with a shriek. What lay beyond was not a room. Not a lab. Not a chamber. It was a replication field. A wide, dark, echoing space filled with pods, all arranged in a spiral like the grooves of a vinyl record. Each pod contained a copy of someone frozen mid-breath. Suspended animation. Men, women, children, co-workers I thought had quit years ago. People I passed in the halls. Some I knew had died. In the center of the spiral, the largest pod of all. Inside it, me. My original self. Unmoving. Wired to machines. Floating in some kind of fluid. I walked slowly toward it, heart hammering. The monitors beside the pod displayed a feed. Surveillance footage from floor 14. From the maintenance tunnels. From the stairwells. Even from my apartment. They'd been watching me for years. But not me. The one that got out. The copy. The copy that was me. The intercom returned. A voice I hadn't heard before. Ragged. Tired. Human. You finally made it down. You were never supposed to reach this far. Who is this? I asked aloud. We tried to stop you, but you kept surviving the resets. You're not just an echo anymore. You've stabilized. You're the strongest copy we ever made. I looked down at the pod. At myself. Why? I whispered. The voice replied. Project Obsidian was meant to preserve minds, map memories, back them up. We thought mirrors were harmless. Just reflections. But something on the other side was watching too. And when we created the first cognitive imprint, we opened a door. You are what came through. I stumbled back. Nausea churned in my gut. That's not true, I muttered. I remember everything. My life, my parents, my job, my thoughts. Because those were his thoughts. You're wearing them. But he's still in there, frozen, unaware. And now, pause, a whirring. You're waking up. A mirror shimmered to life in the far wall. But this one didn't reflect anything. It showed a corridor, the real world, people walking, lights normal, an exit sign glowing green. I stepped closer. Is that the way out? I asked. The voice responded, you can leave, but you won't be going back as yourself. I stared. The mirror flickered. My reflection blinked, but not in sync. It smiled. If you exit, he takes your place. A door hissed open behind me. One final route, an airlock-style chamber lined with warnings. Do not cross with unstable identity. Anchor risk. Identity bleed imminent. But inside was a way back up. A manual elevator. No lights. No voice. Just a hand crank. I stepped in and closed the chamber behind me. As I ascended slowly, the building began to shift around me. The walls warped. Glass bent. Reflections moved. I passed floor -1-2, and suddenly floor 0. For a moment, I saw normality. The reception desk. The lobby. Light from the city. But as the elevator creaked past floor 1, I realized something was wrong. People stood frozen mid-stride. Coffee frozen mid-spill. Papers hanging in the air. The city wasn't just still. It was paused. The speaker returned, the same mechanical voice from the beginning. Only now, broken. Garbled. Emergency alert. Do not exit. Do not. Silence. Then. Too late. The elevator doors opened to floor 14. Exactly where it all began. Except now, every desk was occupied. Every chair filled. And every single employee had my face. Hundreds of me typing away. Smiling. Breathing in unison. One of them looked up. Welcome back, he said. Then, as if rehearsed, they all whispered together. Do not exit the building. The lobby was broken. Once a place of polished marble floors and sterile fluorescent lights, now it was a ghost of itself, cracked tiles, shattered glass panels, and the faint smell of burnt plastic clinging to the air. The automatic doors at the far end of the hall stood wide open, and beyond them, stillness. Not just quiet, frozen. Cars on the street outside were stopped mid-turn. A bus sat halfway through the crosswalk, the passengers inside unmoving, eyes wide and blank. A pigeon hovered mid-air, wings mid-flap, as though suspended in amber. The world outside had stopped. I stepped forward cautiously, each footfall echoing like a scream in the silence. No wind, no movement, not even the hum of electricity. I stepped through the open doors and into the city street. Nothing happened. No alarms, no screams, no sudden rush of air. But everything felt wrong. A man stood on the sidewalk just feet away, one hand raised to check his watch, frozen mid-glance. His skin was pale, too pale, as though whatever animated him had been paused, not drained. I moved closer. His pupils followed me. Only his eyes. The rest of him remained stiff and still. I spun around. Every person on the street, their eyes moved, tracking me, watching me, waiting. That's when I heard the voice again. Not through a speaker. Not from a monitor. Inside my head. Now you've done it, it whispered. You breached the frame. There is no going back. I stumbled backward, retreating toward the building. But Cordova Tower was no longer behind me. It had vanished, replaced by an open space, a void. And in the center of it, a mirror. Massive, floating, spinning slightly in the air. And staring back at me through that mirror was me. But not quite. This version of me looked older. Tired, fractured. One eye bled. The other was black and leaking smoke. His mouth moved slowly. He whispered. I made it out once too. Thought I could stay. Thought I could be real. The world around us shifted. The street began to glitch, slight stutters in time. The same taxi blinked in and out of existence. The frozen people twitched like bad puppets on frayed strings. My reflection leaned forward. But this isn't the world. It's just another layer. Another box. Another level of the same maze. You think you escaped? You think stepping out of the building made you free? His face twisted. You're still in the mirror. I turned. The sky above me cracked like glass. And the shards didn't fall, they drifted upward. The clouds pixelated. The sun reset, blinking like a blinking cursor. Then came the humming. Low, vibrating tones, rising from the ground like a buried engine waking up. and I realized the truth. Cordova hadn't just built a building. They'd built a containment simulation, a layered feedback loop, one that ran infinite copies of reality to study behavior under stress, to observe how long it took before a consciousness realized they were no longer real. I was a test subject, not the first, definitely not the last. I tried to run. The moment I broke into a sprint, the people in the street moved, all at once. Their heads snapped toward me, bones cracking. They screamed in unison, but not words. It was my voice, multiplied 1,000 times, wailing, begging, overlapping itself. I ducked into an alley. The walls glitched. 1 second I was behind a dumpster. The next I was back inside the Cordova lobby. Reset. The emergency lights flickered red overhead. Emergency alert. Do not exit the building. I laughed. I cried. I realized the sick irony. I had never left. I looked up at the security camera in the lobby. The feed buzzed. My face appeared on the monitor, but instead of my current expression, it showed me smiling and mouthing the words, "You're next." I don't know how long I've been here now. Time doesn't move right. Sometimes I wake up in the conference room. Sometimes I'm in the maintenance tunnel. Sometimes I see a version of myself walking out of the building while I watch from behind the glass, screaming for them not to go. Each time I think it's finally over. Each time I find myself right back at the start, alone, inside. They said it was just an alert, a lockdown, a system glitch, but it wasn't. It was a warning. Don't exit the building. Don't look in the mirror. Don't trust your own reflection. Because once you leave, once you think you've escaped, you realize the most horrifying truth of all. You were never real to begin with, and the real you? He's still asleep, still dreaming, still locked deep beneath floor -1, still watching. As you wander endlessly, trapped inside the glass.